Metaphysicians explore a problem related to temporary intrinsic properties, and I explain this problem in this video. Tips are temporary properties, of course, it's in the name. These are properties that you have at one time, but don't have at another time. They are things like doing yoga, or running with balloons, or working across from some colleagues. They are temporary properties. But tips are intrinsic properties. And in order to understand this, we need to differentiate intrinsic versus extrinsic properties. So since tips are intrinsic properties, let's consider intrinsic properties. An individual has an intrinsic property when the property does not rely on some external relation in order for the individual to have the property. An intrinsic property would be things like being a human, or sitting, or smiling. These don't rely on other things. Extrinsic properties, in contrast, depend on external relations, such as being the NCAA all-time scoring leader in basketball. It depends on what other people have scored. Go Hawks. So, what is the problem? What's the philosophical issue related to temporary intrinsic properties, that is, of course? Well, when we consider tips, a person may apparently have contradictory properties, having a property of climbing, but having a property of standing and not climbing. So this is an issue. We want to avoid contradictions. So how do we do this? David Lewis has proposed person stages. It's a different stage that has the tip at one time than the stage having the contradictory tip at another. So an Emma stage has the property of climbing, but it's a later and different Emma stage that has the property of standing and trying to convince her daughter to wear the same dress that she is. Now, a challenge to this view is the idea that it was Emma who was climbing, not some stand-in for Emma, not some stage of Emma. So another solution is presentism. This is the view that the only things that exist are those that exist now. And this view takes tense seriously. So Emma was climbing, but the past no longer exists. Emma was climbing, though, that's true, but Emma is now standing. So that is true of Emma now. A challenge to presentism, and there are three that I will cover here, is first of all, presentism seems to imply things like dinosaurs do not exist. And the response from the presentist is, well, they don't exist. They did exist in the past. A second challenge is the concern that, well, I seem to have a past and I have a future, but presentism denies me of this. And the presentist says, well, no, that's not true. I did have a past. I will have a future. That's true of me now. And finally, a challenge to presentism is the concern about truth makers. What is it that makes the statement about the past, such as dinosaurs did exist, but do not exist now? What makes that true or false? And this would lead to a problem that the presentist addresses, but is too far from our concerns here, where we have to restrict our concerns to temporary intrinsic properties.